Hello everyone, I just wanted to send you this short video just in advance of this week's lecture. This is Friday November the 17th, our lecture this week, which some important information. If you haven't got this, you should have been made aware of this I think at the beginning of the year in the timetable, but if it got lost in your diaries, tomorrow's lecture is at a different time than normal. It is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 till 4:30 p.m. In seminar room 1 as normal. So please come along at that time. It's on Azimut. You should have that in your calendar there. It's just because I'm involved in a different lecture about Paris earlier in the day. And I wanted to send this video to you just in advance of that, and also to clear up a few things about the last lecture we had, which I know some of you weren't able to attend in the end, but we had a nice little session, just as a small focus group of us, if you like, talking about the assignment and passing around a few tips and just discussing a few things that people, I hope, found quite useful. Certainly they seemed to at the time, and so this is just really a video to wrap all that up for you. Those of you that have been writing to me while we've been away, or while I've been away over the last few weeks, and I've not managed to respond to all of you, then hopefully this video will answer all of those questions and just sort all that out for you. So you've got the review feature, which is due in next week. This is it's on Moodle. Oh, I've just got rid of it on my phone. It's then on the deadline of the 23rd of November, and that's all up there on the Moodle page. And it's just 500 words, just a 500-word review in a. It actually says a journalistic style review, something like Gramophone magazine, or BBC Music, or something like that. Which, of course, as you know, this is. I just so happen to have a copy here. You can pick this up quite easily in the library and just have a read through a few of the reviews that are there, and see the kind of thing that you're expected to be doing, and that can be quite useful. But also remember, this is an attempt to get you to engage with the piece of music that you're going to be writing about and thinking about in detail quite a bit over the course of this year for a number of assignments that you're going to be doing. So this is something which, it's short, and the short length of it, just 500 words, that should be quite a challenge for you. Please don't look at that and think, oh, this is going to be easy. It should be a challenge actually to make it good and make it concise within that short range of words, because you want to really be thinking hard about how you can say something of substance within just that 500 words. So a few tips that I said we went through last time in the class, and I'll just give you a bit of information about these, and hopefully it will be useful. The first thing which I say for every lecture course I ever teach, which is that please, as you're writing it, before you start writing it, after you've finished writing it, make sure you are aware of the course criteria. These are available on the Moodle page. I know you can't really see that, can you? It's just sort of white. They're available on the Moodle page. These are the marking criteria for your assignments this year. And I'm always, well, I was going to say I'm surprised at the number of students who don't read these. I'm not surprised actually, because you might think that they're quite they're quite bureaucratic almost, and they're for me to work with, which they are. But also remember, these are the marking guidelines that I'm going to be using when I mark your assignments, and they're the things which really set the bar for where your work wants to be placed and where the mark will be placed. So if you are writing an assignment, and this goes right the way through your entire degree, if you are writing an assignment and you are not aware of the marking criteria, and you're not working with the marking criteria to see what we expect, then you're probably actually not going to get the mark that you are capable of, and it really is that simple. If you're not fully aware of what I'm looking for, as is specifically detailed within the marking criteria, and they are, as I said in that lecture, they are particularly good, I have to say, at the RNCM. I teach at a few different conservatoires. RNCM's marking criteria are, I think quite a gift actually for me, marking the work, and they are really very well written. So please make sure you get into that, just to make sure that your writing really is, squeezing out the last drops of everything that you're capable of, to make sure that you can get your mark as high as possible. So that's the first thing to say. Please do make sure that you are working with the criteria. And another thing, because this is quite a short assignment, there is a tendency that people have when they write about music, which is going to be a problem for a lot of people, I think, is actually, as we said, saying something of substance. And a lot of people start to, if they're not careful, gush about a musical performance, say, oh, this performer was playing so expressively. What does that mean? It really doesn't mean anything. We hope that everyone plays expressively, but they might use different means of playing. And one of the important lines in the criteria, which I think is important to bear in mind, it asks you to make sure within your work that, here we are, that you have an excellent and fluent attempt. This is if you want a first, by the way. This is a 70 to 75, but it's in many of the criteria boxes. An excellent and fluent attempt to articulate the experience of musical performance in writing. Think about that. The ability to articulate the experience of musical performance. That is to say that if you're simply writing that this person is playing expressively, you're not actually telling me what they're doing. And what you should be doing is reading back your work after you have written it to make sure that it really is going to give me a very clear idea of what the sound is on that recording. What is the performer actually doing to make that performance expressive, or to make it dry and make it, lifeless, or if that's, your experience and your opinion of that recording. What are they actually doing? Is it something about the tempo? Is it something about the tone? Is it something about the interaction of various elements of vibrato, or the quality of tone, and any of those things? Really try and identify as closely as you can, in the most practical terms, what is it that the performer is doing to have that effect. So you don't just write about the effect in the most abstract terms and say, oh, this performer sounds like, the music is flying on a cloud. I don't know what a melodic line sounds like when it flies on a cloud. However, if you say that it sounds like it's flying on a cloud, or due to if it's got a certain elegance of tone, an effortless tone that really sits in a bright register and is well projected, and therefore it sounds like it just flies across the rest of the orchestra. Okay, I don't like that last phrase actually about flying over the orchestra, but you get the idea that you're always linking the effect to actually something practical that the performer is doing. And that's a really important point to think about, is how you articulate that experience of musical performance in writing, so that someone else can read it and actually have a very clear idea of what they would expect to hear, what the performance will sound like if they go and listen to the recording. So please make sure that you have a detailed understanding of what you're trying to write about there. So that's one of the things we talked about. Also within that, of course, what approach is the performer taking? Perhaps they're taking a historical approach with the instruments, or the style of singing that they're doing and using. And you can start to really identify with a particular approach to performance, perhaps. And this is the case for not just for historical styles, but also, of course, with different styles of vocal technique, different styles of just vocal performance, different styles of string playing, wind playing, if they're playing, you know, in a French style of oboe writing or in a German English style. All of these things that have quite an interesting effect on the tone. Make sure that you show a detailed understanding of the approach that the performer is actually taking, and again what that means for the technique, what that means for the resulting sound as well. 500 words, the big challenge of how do you actually write something of substance about a recording within that short space of time. The next point we talked about is the two things that you should be trying to demonstrate in the largest sense. Firstly, that you have a very good understanding of the whole recording, okay, or at least the part of the recording that you've chosen to write about. So you should have a general understanding, maybe in broad brushstrokes, the range of different approaches the performer is taking, the range of different styles, how they play fast movements, how they play slow movements, how they play legato, how they play, you know, the singing quality, but how they interact with accompanists or the rest of the ensemble, that sort of thing. So you can be really quite general. But again, it doesn't show that you can write about something in detail, so move between the general and the particular, and you should always be looking at doing this sort of thing. Really try and write about individual details within the performance, how they do this specific thing. Now within 500 words, as we said, there's not enough room to do that for the whole of the recording, but you do need to demonstrate that you can do that. So demonstrate that you can talk about the recording in broad brushstrokes. Demonstrate with maybe one, possibly two examples that you can really pinpoint certain elements, certain moments in the music to talk about in detail. And if you pick one or two detailed moments to discuss, then I can, you know, I'm reading that and I can see, yes, this is someone who I could go to and ask, well, tell me about this section in detail, tell me about that section. And I have the confidence that you have the ability to do that. If you just look at the assignment and you think it's only 500 words, I can't go into detail in that time, so you don't include any details at all, then that's a problem, because obviously I can't see that you have the ability to talk about that in some detail. So make sure there are just one or two moments of the recording that you do really talk about the details of, and that's going to be really important. Now, I talked about just then the idea of you want to talk about the whole recording. Remember, and again, this is something to remember for every assignment you ever write, that you are in charge of the assignment, you're in charge of the writing, and you have the ability right at the beginning to set the scope of your essay, of your, in this case, a review. So if the example that came up actually in the class was if you were writing a review of a recording of Winterreise by Schubert, you know, great big song cycle. Gosh, there's a lot there to talk about. If you just want to limit it and say, well, actually this review is, you know, the first 7 songs or the first half of Winterreise, and set the scope of that, and then you can start talking about the general terms of that set of songs, or the first movement, or maybe the first 2 movements for a bit of variety of a symphony, or, you know, something of a larger work, and then focus on 1 or 2 details, then that's really important. Make sure that you are in charge and you can set the scope of what I'm considering for the larger general picture of the recording. So if it's absolutely huge, if you've got a box set of Mahler symphonies, you don't want to review the whole thing, you know, take charge of that, set the scope, and just focus it on 2 movements, 3 movements that you think you can talk about generally, and then 1 or 2 moments in depth. Finally, what is really going to be important, and again, please do read through the criteria, because this is highlighted by the criteria, but I want to see some sort of real critical engagement with the recordings. And by that, I mean that you're going to be using your own opinions, okay? And that's, of course, taken as, as read when we've got something like a gramophone style review, you're going to be writing about your own opinion. But you want to make sure that your opinions are clearly placed within the debates about a piece of music and an understanding of performance in general. So you want to make sure that your opinions are informed and that you understand where they sit within a whole range of different opinions that different people might have. Okay, so you're showing your opinion, but you are showing an awareness of different debates, different ideas of playing. If you don't like the historical approach, then show really what it is that the performer is trying to do in taking that historical approach, and maybe why it doesn't work for you, for your ears. And then that's much better than just simply saying that you don't like the recording because of the historic sound just doesn't agree with your ears. That doesn't tell me anything critical. It doesn't tell me anything really informed. So make sure that you're clear about how your opinion sits within the broader scope of any sort of critical debates, and make sure that you have the ability to distinguish between different approaches that a performer may take. This is where we talked about, you only need to talk about one recording for the 19th century strand. So again, you can use your words quite wisely there in concentrating only on one recording. But it can be useful to use a second recording, possibly a third, although I would say maybe that's pushing it for the word count a bit, but at least a second contrasting recording that you can deflect ideas off and show that this is really a completely different way of performing. You don't have to engage with that in detail, but just show that you recognise that that is there, and that you can distinguish between these different approaches that a performer could take. And if you just use those to deflect off each other in that way, then that can really help you to bring out the details and really, I think, crystallize for you what it is that you want to be discussing, what it is that you like or dislike about a performance. It gets you to engage a lot more closely if you have a better awareness, and you demonstrate in writing a better awareness of the distinctions and the lines between those different approaches to performance. And of course that you show the ability to prioritise between those different strands of discussion. Now, I mentioned in the class last time a couple of things that you might find useful to read. I'll flag these up again now because you might find this good for the whole of the rest of the course. This book, which I dragged up onto the screen from Amazon, I can't remember how much it costs these days. It's about 15 quid. It was 15 quid when I bought it. As you can see, it's not very big, so before you go out and spend £15 on it, do make sure that you have had a look at it and make sure that you might not be disappointed. But there are loads of copies of it in the library. It's there for you in the library. There's no need to go out and buy it unless you really want to. But this is really good. This is Anthony Burton's book, A Performer's Guide to the Music of the Romantic Period, and that's there. As I say, it's in the library, and it's available on Amazon, as we said, and you will find in there something useful for all of you. There's a short chapter on notation and interpretation by a guy called Clive Brown. I'll talk about more in a moment. A short chapter about the historical background of the music, and then you get a chapter about keyboard writing. There is a chapter about string writing by Robin Stoll, a great authority on string performance practice, and he's a violinist. Trevor Herbert's written a chapter about wind instruments and performance practice in the 19th century. David Mason on singing. That's a nice chapter. Robert Pascal has written a chapter on scores, and I've missed something out in the middle there as well. There's I think something for everyone in that book. So please do have a look at that, because that takes you through all of the, as we said, all of the sort of debates that you might want to engage with when talking about a particular style of performance and a particular performance of music. during this period. So that's a really good starting point. It's not very long, it's not very long as a whole book, but actually the individual chapters are not very long, and particularly if you're looking for an individual instrument, if you're a wind player and you're looking for the chapter about, or the sub-chapter about oboe or about bassoon or whatever, they're really quite short little chunks, so there's something quite nice and easy for you all to engage with there. I'll just throw this in also as a bit of an extra. For this short assignment, I don't really expect you to engage with this great big tome in any great detail, but it's useful to know about it, because this is something which I hope that many of you will be using over the course of the year. This is Clive Brown's book, Classical and Romantic Performing Practice, 1750 to 1900. We said it's about 45 quid or something. It was on Amazon. Again, it's an expensive book. You're not expected to go out and buy it. However, Christmas is coming, and if you do want to have something at your side which is going to be useful, as I say, the Anthony Burton book, you probably will outgrow, actually, because it's quite a basic starting point for this course. You'll probably outgrow that within the course of the degree. This you will not outgrow, actually, in the course of your career. This sits by my piano for the whole of my life, and I use it for whenever I'm preparing concerts and preparing repertoire. It just sits here and is really, really useful. It's a great thing. Certainly as the year goes by, you'll be using that. So they're quite useful, and certainly in the case of that big book will be useful as the year goes by for engaging with things more closely. Also, I picked up this. This I picked up in Blackwell, it's just across the road, the university bookshop. Picked this up a couple of weeks ago. I quite like these little study guides because, you know, writing is part of my job, it's part of my career, it's what I do. It's very difficult. And I think it should be. People who write well always find it difficult. People who write and say writing is easy, you read their writing and you understand why, because it's never terribly well thought out. Writing should be difficult, and it is. Being Critical by Kate Williams, this gives you, and there's a whole range of these, there's a whole set, there's about 5 or 6 of them on different study skills, which is just something that I'm really into, because it really helps me with things that are difficult like that. This is about critical writing, and it's good to think about that at this stage. I just picked this out at page 6 because there's a really good explanation of critical writing here, just in one short table, and I've just highlighted a couple of these that you might find useful. So if you're writing, this contrasts writing descriptively about anything, in our case music, writing descriptively with what it is to write critically and analytically about something, which is what you want to do in order to really make your writing the best that it possibly can be. So in descriptive writing, you state what happens, and in our case here, you state what happens in a recording, what the performer does. Generally, that, you know, does the job, but it's not very good. Instead of stating what happens, you identify the significance of what is happening. So if the performer is performing in the right way, what does that mean for you in terms of the sound? What does it mean for the authenticity of the performance? What does it mean actually for just for the direct hit that the recording, that the performance has on you, emotionally, intellectually, just musically, what effect it has on you. So you identify the significance of what is happening. A descriptive writer states what something is like. You will state what the recording is like, whereas a critical writer will evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of whatever it is they're looking at. Again, looking at both sides, that's really, really useful. A descriptive writer will note the methods that are used within, in our case, a recording, whereas a critical writer will identify whether something is appropriate or suitable. And again, that takes you into that idea of weighing up the significance of the various different aspects of what you want to talk about. Bit of an interruption, sorry, the battery ran out on my camera, I was blabbing too long. Finally for us, a descriptive writer will state the different components of whatever it is that they're talking about, and again, whether you're talking about the different elements of style or the different elements of the way in which a performer interacts with accompanists or a chamber ensemble or that sort of thing. A descriptive writer will state the different components. And a critical writer will weigh up the importance of each of those component parts. And really, it's about taking them apart and thinking about the significance of them and what they do to add to the overall effect. And so these are available just over the road in the university bookshop, which is in a bit of a mobile unit at the moment, but you can find it fairly easily if you've not been there. It's quite useful for this sort of stuff, and these guides are really very good for that sort of thing. So have a think about that. Please do get into the criteria, and remember, please work hard on this, because it is only 500 words, but that doesn't mean that you should just be thinking, you know, you'll just dash it off in however long it takes you to do 500 words, because this is your first opportunity to really think in detail about the performance of this piece of music, which is going to carry you through a number of different components in your musical thinking for this module over the course of the year. So please do take this very seriously and spend this next week really just polishing that up and making it as best as you can, so that it's all ready. It should be difficult, it should, or at least it should be something which requires hard work from you, so that you really get it polished up. If you're working hard, you know you're doing well, compare it against the criteria, do the best you can. I'll see you for the lecture this week, and I look forward to reading it all. Thank you very much. Bye for now.